There's
Hello. Welcome to the round table. I always love when I hit that button a little early. Anyway, good morning, everybody. And we're here in the new year. And so when you think New Year's, you think reflection. So I thought I would throw it to the panel and go moments within your history that define the person you are today. And I know that's a little different than our normal topics of World War II or World War I or Korea or whatever. But I think it's important sometimes that we stop and we go, well, what made us to who we are today? And for me, there's several points in my life that have molded me to the person that I am and given me the moral code that I have. Whether people agree with it or not, I don't really care. It's what's shaped me and made me who I am. So I thought it would be cool to just kind of sit for a couple of minutes and go around the panel and then talk about those moments that shaped us to who we are today. So I guess we'll start with Jeff and we'll go around and we'll talk about different points and we'll see how long this lasts. So,
well, we'll see. There are several things that I think define me. First off, I work at libraries, and my mom is a huge reader. And I think she influenced me by becoming a reader, enjoying books, wanting to catalog books and that sort of thing. She even, in fact, worked at a library and got me in as my first library position. So I have my mom to thank for that, Rebecca Franklin, for doing that for me. But I'm also very scientific in nature, and a big influence there was Star Trek. Big surprise. Everybody knows that I'm a Star Trek fan. And, you know, seeing the old series, the original series on TV back in the 70s, 80s, Mr. Spock at the computer console. I was interested in computers and science and all that sort of thing. So that was a huge influence in influencing me on things that I studied, science and mathematics in computers in high school. And to go along with that, I've always had a fascination with meteorology, studying the weather. And I was fascinated by watching the meteorologist on TV, on your local news meteorologist. We had a very famous one in Cleveland, Ohio, that I watched all the time, Dick Goddard, and he's well known for, in that area anyway, for forecasting the weather. He did it for over 40 years, and kind of interesting. He had a festival that took place in Vermilion, Ohio every year. It's the Woolly Bear Festival, and the Woolly Bear is supposed to predict how the winter is supposed to go. And it's one of the longest running festivals in the world. And he headed that for many, many years. And he's well known for that, not just in Ohio, but worldwide. That influenced me quite a bit. And if you start to think about things like YouTube and being on live streams and recordings, that sort of thing, I have a good friend over in the United Kingdom. His name's Dave Cooper. I went on his live podcast back in 2008 or 9, I think it was, for the first time. I'm a big Doctor Who fan, and he was doing a podcast on Doctor Who. And I went on to his show, and that got me into doing live recordings and podcasting. He got me a job with a podcasting company back in 2012. It's called TalkShoe. And that got me into recordings and onto YouTube, and now I'm here on this show and Question of Trek and all these other things. So all these things have fashioned me, if you will, into being who I am right now.
Yeah.
And I have all these people to thank. So
All
that's
right.
just kind of a brief overview of
Brief
me.
overview. Yeah. Mark.
Gee, Jeff, I'm surprised we're not related somehow because, I mean, with the exception of maybe going into the comic book field, I have the same interest, and that kind of molded me as well. I mean, starting with seeing Star Wars for the first time, of course. I'm a Trek fan, but I'm I'm the weird combination of both, really. But that influenced me going to having the unique view of going to parochial schools for the first 8 years of my life. Got to see things that normally, I mean, you don't get to see in public school, and you get to learn things that are different. And the science field was a major influence in my life, especially the study, space study, astronomy, and all that. Astronomy mostly, mathematics and science. Sorry, I'm loving myself going back to that. But through that, got in. I had a couple of good friends who were collecting comics when we were when I got a little bit older and got into that, and that influenced me heavily. And finding, like you said, finding Doctor Who, being a major fan of Doctor Who, and getting into the computer aspect of things, growing up back with Commodore 64s, which I'm still fascinated with, by the way. Totally love that. But
For me, it was Atari. Atari computers.
Well, yeah, I never got into Ataris, but Commodore. My first computer was a 64, and that's been the computer love of my life the entire time. Even with now, I still have one, and I still have a 5041 disk drive. And 5 1/4 floppy disk or not floppy disk are not easy to find right now. You got to have a source to get them. But pretty much parallels yours. You might go a little bit further into the sciencey part of it, and that wasn't really. Weather was everything with hurricanes down here. That's what fascinated me. Just general weather never fascinated me. During hurricane season would jump start me, and got heavily into that because we had a couple of great meteorologists down here as well. And still have several that are down here as well that are awesome meteorologists. But other than that, I'm sorry to sound boring, but yeah, or to cop off of you, not boring, but pretty much I parallel what your fascination of growing up parallels mine, with the exception of adding comic books into it. And God, I could go into detail about comics. But we don't have the time for that. But that influenced my artsy side as well too, because I draw, but I'm nowhere near a professional. I wouldn't even quite.
Yeah, okay. I can barely draw a stick figure, and this guy's got a comic book character on his avatar. Sure,
yeah,
okay.
Well, no, I didn't say I couldn't draw a stick figure. I could draw a mean ass stick figure, but I should have said that. I could draw a mean stick figure, but I mean, as far as making it a career, no, I couldn't do it because I'm too slow at it.
Well, and then there's me, who gets to be the downer of the show. So with me, growing up, my stepfather was born circa 1928. So I grew up with a lot of old school values. My dad didn't coddle me or protect me against the world, and instead it was, I bet you won't do that again. So me getting a hammer, nails, and a saw to go play in the backyard was no big deal. Nowadays you do that and run. But the major points in my life when I look back are, basically my life was normal for the most part. By normal, I mean, your average childhood, up until 12. At 12, the first life event happened, which was my mother died. And not only did my mom die, but I had to learn real quick how to take charge of a situation. And to this day, you can ask Jeff, I tend to do that a little much. I tend to be a little over take charge and do things. But anyway, when my mom died, my grandmother was the person who was the one signing off on everything. And for one reason or another, my grandmother didn't make it until 2 days before the funeral. So it was me at 12 that picked the urn, wrote the obituary, and met with the minister, met with the funeral home. All that was done by me. And my grandmother just signed off on whatever decisions I made. I picked where she was buried. I picked what she was buried in. I picked the whole from A to Z. I did it all. Not only did I do it once, but then I had to learn how to reschedule something in a hurry, because on the Friday before the funeral, which was supposed to be a Sunday, my grandmother phoned me and told me that I had one day to replan a funeral. So I became very good at doing things on the fly. And needless to say, it was all done, and we had it on a Monday. And then the next one was taking care of my father. When I got back to Winnipeg finally, after my mom died, I moved to Ontario, and then from there I moved back. And my dad, shortly after I got back, decided to break his hip and have a heart attack in the same week, which took him out for about a year. So I left school, and because it came down that either he was going to a home or somebody had to be with him 24/7 for about 6 months. So I left school and I took care of my dad. And that taught me responsibility, that taught me what really matters in life. You know, drama and stuff like that doesn't matter. What you know, like I told school at the time, you will always be here, he won't. So I left school, and I took care of my dad for a year. And then due to other circumstances, I ended up going to work. And before I knew it, I was working 2 jobs, and school was in the rear view. And then at the ripe age of 17 and a half, I found out I was going to be a father. And at 18, I was. And that was another changing point in my life. You change when you become a dad. It changes you in ways you didn't know. Like I used to hunt and stuff like that. Oh, you didn't want to have a gun in the house when you have a little girl walking around. So there went that hobby real quick. And stuff like that. So my daughter was born, and then my other son was born. And then when my second son was born, I went back to school finally. I was still working. By then I had carved out a nice little security career. I was a leading member in my union. But I kind of got to rewind a little bit. At 19 was the next major change in my life, which was my dad dying. My mom and my dad dying are 2 separate emotions, because my dad was the rock. Dad was the one who, you know, he could get malaria and he'd bounce back. Doctors had my dad dead 17 times, and every time he gave him the finger. The family joke was at 56, they gave my dad 2 weeks to live. They just forgot to tell him what year and month. So for me, when dad did go 3 days after my 19th birthday, it was hard. And it changed me to remember that, you know, people in your life are only there for a brief moment, and to spend as much time with them as you can, because they're not going to be there forever. And it changed, and that part of my life is rearing its face now, because, and I know I'm being a big downer here, but yeah, it's my life. Um, I look at it now, and it's changed a lot of the decisions I make now. Like, for instance, my children are not in that position. I'm in dialysis right now, and right or wrong, my kids are forbidden from giving me a kidney. I won't let them make that choice. My son has regular kid chores. He does dishes, garbage, and takes care of the cat litter. That's it. That's his chores. I won't let him, you know, if I'm having a bad day, once in a while he cooks supper, but he's not doing what I did. And that's it's kind of come full circle now, where I'm the dad that's sick. The difference is I'm too stubborn to let him let him sacrifice his childhood as I did. So that kind of guides my decisions, and I've gotten a little bit of flack over it, but I don't care. But you know, my kids being born, and then the last one I'll do is when my back finally gave out, and I had to retire. Hardest thing I ever did. By that point, I had about 13, 14 years in security. I was site supervisor. So I had the cushy job. I got to belch out orders and not do very much. It was great. And I had at that point sat on 3 negotiations, successful contract negotiations. I only had to call for a strike once. We didn't actually have to do the strike, which was nice. So I had that career, and I had a reputation. I could go to any security company in the city and be hired on the spot. I proved it when I jumped from the company I'd been with for 12 years to another one. I was hired the day of, without any question, because of the reputation I had that preceded me. So I had to give all that up and find a new thing to do. And in came YouTube. Bird, actually. I ended up watching some of Bird's videos, and I'm like, well, if he can do it, I can do it. And then YouTube came in, and then I started Rambling Canuck, and then Doom and I started this channel. And yeah, so that's my overview. Sorry to bring everybody down.
No, it's good to be reminded of, you know, events that may be negative at the time, but in large, you know, respects change us and make us better people.
No. Which is, and in a lot of ways, I think my biggest fault is I get jaded, because somebody will come to me and tell me it's the end of the world, and I'll look at them, is that all? Yeah, because, right. You know, it's just, to me, it's like, that was Tuesday. Well, what are you talking about? Man, it's no big deal. Move on. You know, but to them, it's the end of the bloody world. To me, it's Tuesday. So.
Well, you've been shaped by a lot of different things, so you're used to dealing with them. They're not.
Yeah,
but you can be a guide for them.
Yeah. So for me, it's just, that's a Tuesday. And I
Mark,
have
were you going to say something?
Yeah.
I could have gone into I brought that up. I've had loss, it's bad loss, but not nearly as bad as yours. I mean, I've never said this, and this will be a first I've ever said this on live stream. or to anybody other than somebody who's real close. I lost my first child back in it's hard for me to say this. In '96, we lost me and my wife lost our first child, and that defined me in a negative way for several years. And I had a very good friend who you know very very well, Robert.
Yes, I do.
who helped me see things better in a different light. And if it wasn't for her, I may not be sitting here talking to you guys.
Yeah.
I mean, it affected my life that badly that I held on to it for that long.
Yeah.
And
I will say on a positive note to balance this out, my influences as far as, pop culture and stuff like that, grade 6 is when a lot of it started for me. I got into Star Trek. I got into the Titanic. I think I pissed my librarian off. Sorry, Jeff. Because I made her go to every school in the city and get me Titanic books because I read all of the ones that were in my school and went, give me more. And then they had to go and...
If she was a good librarian, she loved that.
Yeah, she did. She did. But I would bug her every single time. Is there something new? Is there something new? For like a year and a half, I was just narrow focused on the Titanic. And then I got into World War I, World War II, and that hasn't stopped. I mean, I have a history channel. So there's that. And just history just enveloped, like just learning as much as I could. I could sit there and watch war documentaries for hours. And then I think the biggest thing for me when I was growing up, watching stuff or learning stuff, was asking how much of this is baloney and how much of this is actual fact. So to find that out, you have to research more. And I think a lot of it was one thing I was able to do a lot of was pull myself out of the situation. So I was able to pull emotion out and just look at, well, okay, yeah, in hindsight, this was a stupid idea, but what was it at the time? And then you try to put, that's always fun for me to put myself in that time frame and go, okay, well, like I've said before, in one respect, attacking Russia and having a battle on two fronts was a stupid idea in World War II. With hindsight, that was stupid. However, if you go back and you think about it, there's an argument to be made that he didn't think he was going to have a war on two fronts because he figured he'd have Russia dealt with before the British and the Americans could create the second front. So with that, under that perspective, it's not as stupid as it sounds. But with hindsight, we know it was stupid. Right. So it's an interesting way of being able to do that is you can just kind of detach yourself from it and go, well, could this happen? And then for a while I got into conspiracy theories big time. Not that I believed any of them, but just researching them was fun as hell.
Bigfoot's real, man.
It's fun to go through like the rabbit holes, especially when like the Titanic one, I went deep into that one because it was just, could it have been? Well, could have been. No. And then you come to that realization about 5 minutes in where it's like, yeah. Like the Titanic conspiracy worked up until Ballard found the Titanic. Once Ballard found the Titanic, and not only found the Titanic, but brought pieces up from the Titanic, there was no longer a conspiracy theory. Because...
doesn't stop them, though.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. But, because each part of the ship was marked with a ship number. So, like deck plates, et cetera, right? Well, they brought up a piece of the ship, and it has Titanic's markings. In order for them to swap everything out, including the deck numbers, they didn't have the time.
Yeah.
There's just not enough time to have, because they were only in dry dock beside each other when this switch apparently happened for, I think, 6 months, maybe. And that's probably long. My memory is kind of going on that, but it was a short amount of time. They didn't have enough time. They just didn't. There was just not enough time to be able to do it to that detail. I mean, not only that, but the Titanic and the Olympic have different portholes. So if you looked at the Titanic and you looked at the Olympic and you knew what you were looking for, you could tell them apart because there was differences in the portholes. But now I'm getting too granular, and we're not talking about the Titanic, so I'll shut up.
That's something that defines you.
Yeah.
So it fits.
It fits. Yeah. But, you know, and so history was a major, like I said, major influence with me. And the wars were, I have a military family for the most part. So anything military was big. And just history, and then it became history in general. You dip your foot in one topic, and then you're on to another, and on to another, and on to another, and then you become me, a jack of all trades and master of none.
Oh, but you do it so well.
Yeah. As my dad would say, fake it till you make it. Which is what you do. You go into a topic and you fake it till you know what you're talking about. And eventually you end up knowing a couple of things. You know just enough to be dangerous. Yeah.
Exactly.
But yeah, so it's really interesting to sit back and go, oh, okay, well, yeah, this shaped me, and oh yeah, that happened. Because after a while, things just kind of go into that distant past, and then when you don't, it doesn't hit you until you stop and think about it. Oh yeah, that happened. And sometimes you don't realize how certain things affect you and change you to what your current philosophies are, and it could be just something small, and then it had a profound effect, and you don't realize it. It's really interesting how that works. No, well, I think what we'll do is we'll get final thoughts, and we'll wrap this up for a 30-minute video. Why not? So, Jeff?
Well, I didn't talk many negatives, but one of the things that did influence me quite a lot was, and I don't know if I've ever said this on a live stream before either, but my sister, I have one sibling. When she was 6 years old, I was 4 at the time. She contracted a disease called Rice syndrome, and she was in a coma for 17 years before passing. That affected my parents. It affected how I was raised. I was raised by my grandmother quite a bit. And I'm sure that influenced me a lot in my philosophy and how I do things. So good things can come out of bad things. And
absolutely.
Some good things came out of that. So don't take a bad occurrence in your life as something that's completely bad. Something will come out of it that is good.
Yeah, well, for me, my eldest daughter is Faye, named after my mother, and my second oldest son is Arthur, named after my father. So,
yeah.
And Mark?
But I mean, besides what mentioned, like I said, yeah, I mean, you like to add what Jeff said. You do it when you take the bad, like I did, and go to a dark place with it. It can affect you, but if you have somebody there that will help you see the light, it's better. It works. It does work itself out. So don't give into it like I did. Like I said, it took. I'm not ashamed to say it took Mary getting me to see the better part of life, which I'm thankful for. And as far as anything, as far as what I've grew up with shaping me, I haven't given any of it up. I'm still the same 12, 13, 14-year-old mentally that I am for
I think we
40
all are.
plus years later. But I mean, you've got to keep a part aspect of your childhood
Yeah.
into yourself. If you don't, you'll get old. You will get old quicker, and you won't see things like you used to. And you don't want to become that grumpy person yelling at everybody. You want to be fun. I mean,
Yeah.
you can be grumpy at times, but
Yeah.
just never let go of what you know and what you grew up with.
Yeah.
Is what I'm trying to say.
And
Unless it's something bad,
and
now then change
yeah,
that.
yeah.
But because
Or
there are
learn from the
paths,
bad.
but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and I'll end it with like right now in my life, I have Mary, and without her, I don't know how I would have got past this last year. There was a lot of bullshit, and she's kind of kept me on the not going crazy.
She has a knack for doing that.
Yeah, so um, for that, I'm very thankful. I'm very thankful to have all of you, Mark, Jeff, Loki, the entire community. It's great, especially for someone who doesn't get out much. I consider a lot of my closest family and friends to be this community, and it's great. And even though as I've said, a lot of bad has happened, but a lot of good has happened too, and a lot of it has happened because of it. I wouldn't be able to handle what what I've had to go through if I didn't go through what I've already gone through. And so always remember that yes, you'll get stumbling blocks. Yes, you will F up. As my dad used to say, if you don't F up, there's something wrong. Because
Yeah.
you're just going to. I tell my son that all the time. You're going to F up. I expect you to screw up. So I never allow negativity to define you. Instead, allow it to mold you into something better. The old, diamond is done by pressure. Try to find the good in every bad. And for me, that's still hard to this day. But you do it a day at a time. And don't sweat the little things. And with that, I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
I know this was a little different, folks, but it's the new year, so a little bit of a retrospective. And with that, thank you and good night.